Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports. This is another new show. I know we introduced a new show last week with Mariner Mondays with myself and Brittany Weisner. We are doing a Kraken show now. We might workshop this, hear what Jade and Silvia might have to think. Because I'm not super good with names all the time. Sometimes one runs into me. Um, but I'm gonna put the first title of this as Keeping Up with the Kraken. I don't mean to have any sort of similar vibes as Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I would hope that the Kraken aren't that dramatic,
We're
but
gonna get sued.
well, I hope not. I can't. Where's my wallet? Here, we cannot. I cannot afford that, so we'll work on it. But yeah, just a weekly show. We'll have this on, all the podcast platforms you could look for on our YouTube as well. And then, we'll write up some of this, um, to go over the state of this team, what they're looking at, you know, we'll touch on a few things. The stretch that this team has been on since the ugly last week of November, the power play production stepping things up, the goaltender situation, I wouldn't call it that. And I don't need to keep up with reality shows and talk about the situation. But that sort of thing with the tandem, some of the standouts for the Kraken in this time frame since that last week of November, and then the week ahead as the Kraken face a 4-game road trip starting on Tuesday. Well, no, after Tuesday's home game. So we'll get into it with this stretch of games since the end of the week, the month of November. Uh, that last week um, of the 11th month of the year, uh, it was a stretch where the Kraken played 5 Pacific Division games in a row. You lose to Los Angeles. You beat Anaheim on the road. That's your only win of those 5 games, as you lose to Anaheim at home the night before. Uh, yeah, was it the night before Thanksgiving? Then you lose on the road in San Jose, and you lose at home against San Jose. Just a really ugly and, dare I say, rock bottom week for the Kraken. We get into the month of December here, and the Kraken have points. I believe it's in 5 of 7. Yes, 5 of 7 games. Uh, you know, you beat the Devils, you beat the Islanders, no, you beat the Canes. Sorry, you beat the Islanders. You lose to the Devils by 1 goal. You win a wacky game at MSG against the Rangers. You take a point away from the Panther. Well, you take a point from the in the Panthers game to begin this homestand. You beat the brakes off of what remains of the Boston Bruins, and you lose really ugly on Saturday against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So just we'll go around the room here, and I'll kind of alternate how I do this. But
Maverick, stop. Sorry, dog. He's
Sylvia, what have you seen in the games, since that ugly stretch against Pacific Division opponents, improvement wise, just what sticks out to you from this Kraken group since that time?
I think a big thing for me has been standout players, right? I think one thing with the Kraken, we talked about this a lot, is they are not a very consistent team. And we've seen this all season. Wins don't come easy to them. And sometimes when they do come easy, the losses come even harder. So I think one thing that we're seeing is like these players who are kind of like pushing out of the boundaries of what it means to be a Kraken player. And by that, I mean, we are seeing players who, in the past, they have not shown up and shown out like offensively, defensively. They're kind of quiet. And then all of a sudden, you have like Oliver Bjorkstrand or Andre Burakovsky. Honestly, Burakovsky has kind of been the guy for me right now, where he's not really putting up numbers the way Shane Wright and Bjorkstrand are after they got scratched, but he is putting up plays. He's kind of been in key moments in the last few games where he's just in the right spot. He's making the right passes, he's making the right calls, and he's kind of been like he's kind of creating his own identity. And I think that kind of goes to what the Kraken are doing now, is where they are coming into their own identity after having this whole leadership situation. getting some Stanley Cup winners onto their roster. They are becoming like they're finding their identity. They're becoming a team, and I think that's also what we're seeing with these like standout players, where they're also finding their identity on the team.
Yeah, Jaden, that'll lead to you. What have you, someone who's been at some of these games, with me or without me? I wasn't at the game on Saturday, and maybe that's for the best.
Yeah.
Um, what have either, agreeing with what Sylvia saw, what have you seen from this team since December? We flipped the calendar to December.
Kind of same thing with a lot of standout players. I think we've had a few glimpses into really good goaltending, and I know that um, they had Grubauer with the mystery home injury is what I keep calling it. And that definitely, Joey kind of had to take on a like single goaltending kind of thing for a minute there is what it seemed like. Obviously there was backup, but it was really kind of the Joey show for a second there. And I think that we've seen some good glimpses into goaltending, but it's been a lot of just standout players and, this player's looking really good, that player's looking really good. There was a few games where it was Montour looking really good, and then we've had Shane Wright kind of glimpses of the Shane Wright that everybody was really excited for coming into this season, where he looked really good. And then, a couple of games where he's not really sticking out the same way. So kind of, yeah, echoing off of Sylvia with just standout players.
I what stood out to me about this team, and maybe it's more so in that it started in that game against the Panthers. The Panthers, I mean, they're coming off the Stanley Cup.
The Panthers are the Panthers.
Yeah, and I mean they look really primed to have another deep run unless something happens. Obviously, we've got a lot of time between now and the playoffs, but it's the way that the Kraken clogged the middle of the ice. It's just the game against Florida, and then that game against the Bruins. Obviously, the Bruins those are two very different teams in terms of how I would view their talent right now. Um, and still somehow Boston is near a play. I think they're in or near a playoff spot. Um, just everything offensively for both of those teams that came into Climate Pledge Arena was from the perimeter. Boston's only goal came off that the penalty shot after Brandon Montour did the Superman dive on top of the puck, which was still remarkable to see. I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever seen something like that. Uh, Either, and it's been a while. You see goalies dive on pucks, but to see a skater do that, um, maybe I need to watch more hockey, but just the way that everything has had to come through, you know, perimeter stuff for those teams, and obviously Florida only gets the one goal as well, in regulation. So, um, that it's just been remarkable to see that. And with our game day posts, I always do the shots blocked per game, and Seattle has crept up since the season started from like 17th. In the end of November they were like 10th, and then on Saturday they were like at 5th. So
Hmm.
they're blocking a lot of shots. They're making things harder for their opponents, and I've really liked to see that. Obviously Saturday is not a great indication of that. And the Rangers game was just ugly and wild in general. But if you
Um,
mean, mm,
After Saturday's game, somebody said something about how Grubauer had, I can't remember the shots off the top of my head blocked, but how he had X amount of shots blocked. And I think it was in when we were talking to Monty, and that's when I posted the quote on Twitter, but I can pull it up if you want me to. But that's when that came into play, where he was like, "No, both goalies are doing great, and they're the best. The goaltenders are the best players on the ice every night, and if we play better in front of them, then they play better for us, essentially." So
yeah,
there definitely was you know we the media kind of address the shots blocked thing, because Grubauer did have obviously the score doesn't reflect it, but he did have a pretty decent game on Saturday, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, and I mean, the quote from Monty was both our goalies battle. They're our best players every night, and if we help them as much as we can, the better for us. So it's nice to have two goalies feeling good, working extremely hard. We'll touch on goalies in a bit, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Just the shots
just
blocked made me think of that.
oh yeah, no, and that obviously that'll help you. I know you want your goalie to see a few to get,
Yeah.
be able to track the puck well. And Silvia pointed that out in the Lightning game. I was reading those obviously before that, I think it was the third period where they really pulled away, right?
Yeah.
Tampa. But it did seem like Gruby was tracking things really well, and which is nice to see because there are some games, and as someone who's we've done work with Gruby, with Sports Star of the Year, or we did a CSS piece with him around different Seattle sports. He's a great human being, and I can
Hmm.
separate the player and the human being.
Absolutely.
Um, there are some games you can tell he's just not tracking well.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, really, in this stretch here, outside of that Sharks game, which was really ugly. I mean, you know, he looked good to me in the Rangers game after a soft one or two, you know, that was just a wild game. That was mucky.
Yep.
Um, he's looked good to me largely, since then. And um, Dan Bausma was asked about that. Well, if he's been able to kind of get off that home accident, and Dan did kind of attribute that him getting past that to some of his increased play in morning skate the other day. So, yeah, I don't know. The defensive stuff really has stood out to me lately.
Hmm.
Um, and I really like Sylvia's point about identity because it does feel like they're leaning more into that. And I don't think we need to dedicate a lot of time to him. That sounds mean, but Daniel Sprong was brought in at a time where this team needed offense,
Hmm.
right? They take a flyer on. Again, he was not doing much in Vancouver to begin with. He had that really sick goal in the preseason, and I was like, oh great, the Canucks got another one. Like this is going to be terrible, and then he didn't do much. So the Kraken took a flyer on a guy for future considerations. Who knows what that'll end up being,
Hmm.
right? Um, and he's just not been the Kraken play a style now that's hard, that's fast skating. It's very different than how Daniel Sprong plays, and a lot of the time, well, not a lot of the time, but since you know he's gotten in the lineup, the times he's gotten in the lineup, lately, he just kind of looks out of place. He's not a guy who really back checks very well. He's unfortunately he's just kind of an extra, and I imagine he'll be that um unless God unwilling, God forbid, we deal with more injuries to this team. um yeah, I think that's the only route we see him back in. I liked the mention of Andre Burakovsky. um he had that really sick goal against the Devils, and that looked more like the Andre Burakovsky that you want him to be. um And I don't know, it's interesting. I know there's been a lot made of the players who have been scratched, right? Who have come back in and been able to produce really well. Obviously, Shane's a great example of that. Oliver Bjorkstrand's a great example of that. Um, I'm intrigued though, because say Yanni Gord does come back on Tuesday, like Dan Bilesma was hopeful for. Who is coming out of the lineup? I, if I go back to my lines here, um, probably Ryan Winterton, just looking at this. But, there was a time when Yanni was uh healthy that it was Berkey. And he obviously hasn't responded production wise as much as the other two, right? And it's not maybe fair to say it like that, but you just, you still need more from a guy on that contract. Um, but I mean, hey, if you're doing the things the right way, they will come for you eventually, right? So no, I do like the great points, and this is part of why I wanted to do this because I only have so much in my little pea brain, and that's why I like to bounce things off of you guys, and hear your perspectives. So, um, yeah, well, I know we talked so much about the goalies. Um, with that, yeah, we'll go straight into the goalies. Yeah, no,
I was
Joey
gonna say
Daccord,
goalies are like the cornerstone of
Yeah,
a
I was about to
team.
say, let's do a whole goalie episode. Let's just
we
make
we
this the
could
goalie podcast.
Oops,
we
all
could.
goalies.
Mickey Coco, if you want to look at future goalies, had another win in Coachella Valley tonight, so that's fun. Future the goalie position, ideally, but yeah, no, I mean, I'll have to pull one of them up while I throw it over to one of you guys, but it's been nice to get Groovy these games because at morning skate before this Lightning game, typically my tools and like checklist to see who's going to start because everybody really posts the first off the ice, but there have been times where that's not the case, where the first off the ice isn't the starter. Um, it's rare, but you got to look at who works on rink two with Steve Briere,
Hmm.
and who's on the starters net, which is the net if you're sitting in the media side, which is closer to the doors, is the net over by 32. If that happens, they're like foolproof the starter, and Gruby was the guy who did that. And some of the other media folks were like, "Oh, why are you starting Grubauer tonight? Why don't you start Joey tonight and have Gruby go against Ottawa?" And I was like, I don't know. He came off of a good game against Boston. I would rather, I understand going with him after Joey's played so much, you know, like you said, to deal with when Gruby was dealing with that injury. I can understand, because there were times last year, you remember Joey's first full years as NHL starter was last year,
Hmm.
right? And they rode him pretty hard. And understandably so, he was hot, right? But there were times after those long stretches, I think there was like he played 4 games in a row and we talked to him. I don't know if it was I'm sure it was, but he said he was tired, and
Hmm.
understandably so. It's a heavy workload, that you look at, and I'm not comparing him to any of these guys, although he does have a great goal saved above expected that I'll look at in a minute. But you look at what happens with some of these great goalies around the league, and they get ridden so hard, like a Hellebuck, and coming a playoff time, he's burnt out. He's burnt to hell. I
Hmm.
don't know how much they're going to play Eric Comrie this year, even though I love his TikTok content. But,
Same.
you know, I would, in an ideal situation, especially since you've allotted so much money to the crease, I
Hmm.
would like to be more balanced, and having some rhythm would certainly help that. I think if we looked at that Ottawa game, not Ottawa, sorry, San Jose, that really ugly one, it's not excusing it all, but I believe that was his first start in a while. So, well,
That
yeah, his
sounds
first
right
start.
to me.
He
Yeah.
started that game against the Rangers on Sunday the 17th, which was a good game, and then he goes 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 games without 11 days without starting. That's but I don't know. You get my point. Um, we'll go reverse this time. Jade, what have you seen goaltender wise from this tandem, and just your general thoughts on it? Because yeah, it's obviously since this franchise began, it's been a hot topic.
Yeah. Obviously Joey is has been starting better this year. Sorry, there's gonna be a lot of dog content here also. He's been doing this lately. But anyways, Joey's been obviously the better starter this year. And I'm sure you both, and I'm sure everyone has seen on Twitter the discussion surrounding the goalies. But I think that when Grubauer is given the chance to start, that he's looking pretty good for the most part. He obviously has his games where, he's like you said, not quite tracking the puck as good, or he's not quite like just in general, not quite as on top of it as the fans are expecting, or, people watching the game are expecting. But I think that when he's given the chance to start, he does usually look o- okay at a minimum. And especially coming off of that injury at home, in my opinion, he's looked a little bit better since then. Is kind of the
Yeah. I
gist of it.
also,
I was gonna say I can go on and on about Joey and how great he's looked all year, and but Grubauer needs a little bit of praise also. So,
like talking about, people being confused of why he started against the
yep.
Lightning. You can't build a goalie's confidence if he's only playing the easy games, right?
That's what
So
I said the other day too.
yeah, like
Yeah.
obviously, like there's a reason why Grubauer is being paid his contract is set up the way it is,
Hmm.
right? The Kraken and the front office found something in him that he still has. It's very obvious that he still does. We saw it with the Lightning. It is very hard to play against the like Gensel, Point Kucherovs of the NHL and just like not have or and put that game up if you're bad, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So like if you're just starting him against, San Jose, Ottawa, like Ottawa isn't bad, but they're not the Lightning. Like
Hmm.
his confidence is just going to be, okay, I'm a second tier goalie. Why am I trying anymore?
Yep.
So I think starting him against the Lightning was an awesome decision. Like y'all said, he looked awesome. He like was tracking the puck. There was a moment where he was being faced by like it was like Kucherov, Gensel, and I think Braden Point like shot the puck, fully just like grabbed it out of midair. It was awesome, and I think like that's a big thing with Grubauer and like any goalie, right? You got to
Hmm.
treat your goalies delicately. Um, like you have to give him the space to grow. I can't imagine that he's feeling very good when he is kind of our second tier goalie right now. Like they have to give him space to grow, especially now that we're seeing a Kraken team that will offer that goal support where they weren't the first like 8 games that he lost.
Yeah.
So now that he has that, like he's looking stronger, he's looking a lot more confident. And if he and Joey can get back to like balancing those games, neither of them are taking the load like the
Getting
way
burnt out.
yeah, that they can't get burnt out. I think we can definitely like climb up that wild card spot a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, I look here at, their stats since the month began. They're both over a 900 save percentage. Um, you know, Obviously it's tough to just like you said with the goal support as well. I mean, it's even the Tampa Bay game, like for so long that was a 2-1 game. And it's like,
Hmm.
well, I was fully anticipating to end something like that, or maybe like 3-1, give Tampa Bay an empty net goal or something like that. It's just I have a hard time blaming a goaltender when you score one goal.
Yep.
Like,
That's how
you
I felt the
know,
entire game because I was sitting there, we got on the board first and then
mhm.
Tampa scored and then Tampa scored again. And then I was like, okay, not feeling really good. And then there was a couple, I don't know, there was a couple shots that I was like, that's a little bit sloppy, but all right. If it makes it in, cool, that's a good goal. But
Sure.
it was the whole game felt a little bit that specific game felt kind of sloppy and um honestly, the only way that I can describe the third period was that the team was asleep and Grubauer did his best to
Yes.
Yeah,
defend a sleeping team. Like yeah, it was a game. It was a game.
it's just, you know, that even that shut the Florida game. I mean, there's a segment of the fan base that obviously feels like Joey is the child that can do no wrong, you
Hmm.
know. So like that 2-1 shootout loss, they're like, oh well, Florida's a good team, and it's like anything outside, of blame. But if you put Grubauer in that situation, I'm sure it's, oh well, if he would have saved a few more shots, you know. Yeah, no, I do like the mention of the increased goal support, because it's funny just again looking at this segment since December began. You've got 4 goals, 5 goals, 2 goals, 7 goals, 1 goal, 5 goal. Like the offense is showing up at a more consistent rate. Again, I like that Sylvia mentioned the inconsistencies, because this is a 500 team, a statistical at 500 team
Yep.
that has been, their only consistency is inconsistent. And
Yes.
I hate it so much, because you can kick do I want to swear on this one? No, we'll see if I do. I said it the last two
Fine.
Mariners ones we've recorded. I'll say I'm not gonna do it, and then I drop an F word at the end of the show. Um, you can drop 8 goals on Montreal. You can score 5 against, Boston. You score 7 against the Rangers. You score 4 against Carolina, but then, you'll play San Jose and, oh, 2 goals. That's all I can do. I don't
Oops,
I don't know
sorry.
how to
Yeah.
score more. I'm
Yep.
just a little baby. Like, oh, yeah, to go with the goalies thing and wrap up there, like I think it's the consensus here that if you can have a true tandem, which you are paying them like no one else has this money dedicated to the crease,
Hmm.
unless you've got a star goalie, a Hellebuck, a Ottinger, how Swayman is paid now,
I was
right?
gonna say it kind of reminds me of the Swaymark tandem last year, the way that the way that the Kraken are paying Decord and Grubauer, and it's just not quite showing up that way, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, no. So, you know, and Sylvia even mentioned, I like mentioning the contract because a lot of people are still butthurt about that, and we're in year f four. Yeah, yeah, four. Sorry, like the franchise has only been around for 4 years. We were in 4 of 6 of it. Like, we just have to get past that point. Like, if you
Hmm.
keep bringing it up, like that's great, but it's a moot point at this juncture. He was coming off of a Vesna finalist season. Like, I, I'm fine with that. We do get glimpses of that. I saw it in that shutout. They got shut out at home, 2-0. Like, I can only
Hmm.
do so much, when he plays really well in that Rangers game, and that was before the Rangers kind of imploded in the Jacob Trouba and all this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He looked pretty good in that Boston game. Yeah, there were a lot of bad saves. Your defense, again, I loved the way they've clogged the ice. 2 of the last 3 games, obviously not so much last game, maybe the first 2 periods of last game. Um, but you can't just put a post out there and call it good. He
Hmm.
played well in the Boston game as well. So, I've liked what I've seen from that. And like you've both talked about, getting that confidence and if you're able to be more balanced, I'm really happy with that because we'll play 4 games. You'll go on the little break here at the end of December, and then January is not going to be easy. You've got Vancouver. 2 days later, you've got Edmonton, and then 2 days later, you've got the Devils. I mean, that's not an easy stretch.
Yeah.
Just looking at those rosters, this yeah, having a legitimate tandem and playing them that way instead of the Dave Hackstall, I'm gonna play you until you explode on the ice
Yep.
is
Mhm.
is how I would like to see things play out more. And I you know it's his first year. I know Sylvia's written about, and you talked about the new leadership and sometimes I have to remind myself, oh yeah, it's his first year as the head coach of this franchise.
Hmm.
So obviously he's done it at the NHL level before, but you know new team, new adventure, all that sort of thing. So, talking about goalies, let's look at power play. And this is something that you know I've complained about it for 4 years now because it hasn't really been consistently good. Again, talk about the consistencies. The only consistency is inconsistence. Um, since November 29th, that's the 8-5 loss against the Sharks, where I know they had at least 2 power play goals, and they were both Shane Wright. The Kraken's power play ranks sixth in the NHL, at 33.3%. Just I don't know. What are our thoughts on the man advantage? We'll start with Sylvia, and then when she wraps up, Jade, you can take over, and if there's anything I need to sprinkle on, I can do that. But I mean, it's obviously very encouraging, and what you'd hope to see when this staff kind of got overhauled this past off season.
Yeah, I think shot quality is up. I think production is also up, as we can obviously tell. There was a super cool stat on Twitter, I think yesterday during the Lightning game. I think Allison Ballard might have tweeted that most of our power play goals in the last like 5 to 7 games have come through in the like last 30 seconds of the power play, which I think is fantastic. I think it really shows because so when we're talking about the power play, people are like, you're on the man advantage, just shoot the puck, right? And
Mhm.
I think when we're seeing these goals come in super late, we're seeing a team that's like willing to set up plays that are going to work. And a lot of these goals that they have been producing are like tipping goals, or they're like goals that are getting deflected in. So it goes back to this whole new strategy. I think it was Vince Dunn or Alexia talked about it the game before the game against the Bruins during a post game interview about how they just need to rush the puck. They just need to get people in front of the net. And I think that's really what's been working on these power plays is that they are getting players, they're setting up plays where they're just confusing the goalie. They're kind of like they're kind of being nuisances. And I think that's a lot of their other goals have also come like their man advantage, the 5-man advantage goals have also come in like that, where they're just being nuisances. And it's really, really working on the power play with all of these goals coming in those last 30 seconds. They're like thinking it through. It's no longer an act of desperation. It's like an act of actually knowing how to play the game. Again, going back to the whole identity thing, it's an act of knowing how to be a Seattle Kraken in like the fourth year in.
I don't think that I could have said any of that better. So I'm gonna leave it at that. You encapsulated all of my feelings. So,
See, again, this is why I like doing these things because we can
yep.
bounce the ideas, you know what I mean? Yeah, no, that's really well put, and I was actually Sylvia and I were I think we were poking around different stats and notes before we started here. And I can look at it again, and this will be a great transition later on to our standouts. But I looked at some of the guy, I looked at like it was I'll find it here, but it was high danger chances essentially. And some of the guys who are at the top were the guys who have been the most productive since the month of December started, and guys who get power play minutes in Shane Wright and Oliver Bjorkstrand. Those are guys who get to the net. It's something that's been the most frustrating to me in this franchise's existence, um, has been their like ineffectiveness at getting to the front of the net. There are guys who do it consistently. Jaden Schwartz is often in the front. Johnny Gord is, but obviously he's hurt right now. Shane Wright is a young guy, but he does it. He gets to the hard areas, and that's why I've always been a fan of Shane Wright and his development. Even
Mhm.
when he was earlier in the season, before he got scratched, it was like at least he's going to the net. Like that's something I've enjoyed. The two power play goals, um, I think from the first San Jose game on, like, excuse me, Shane had three or four power play goals. Like all of his goals were coming on the man advantage, and a bunch of them were just him on the back door, walking right down left untouched, which is funny to me. But yeah, just the amount of times, I mean, good things happen when you go to the net. That's obvious, right?
Yep.
Like I hear that all the time in hockey. Um, and oh yeah, high danger expected goals. Okay, I look at this. Jared McCann's at the top of that, but that's not a surprise. He's your best forward. But yeah, guys who go to the net are guys I just talked about. Jared McCann, Jaden Schwartz, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Yanni Gord, and then Shane Wright's there. Like those are, Shane Wright obviously different because he's a younger guy, but I don't know. I like seeing that from someone, and that obviously would lead to our standouts. But some also, it just looks better. People talk about the eye test, right? And sometimes I think that's just garbage. Um, the power play has just looked better. The movement has looked better. There are so many times in October and a good amount of November where I sit there and I'm like, all right, power play time, and I'm like, that just looked like trash. They
Yep.
didn't get any attempts on that. There's just nothing there, nothing of substance. And that's when I think Edzo in one of the broadcasts said, you just need to take your five best players at this point and put them on the fucking whoop. There it goes. All right.
It's
Well,
over.
there's my
It's
one.
over.
I didn't even get to the end of the show. Yeah.
Dang.
And just put them on the ice. And that would um be a lot of the same guys that they put on the ice anyway.
No, I
Um,
agree with that though, because I same sentiment where I'm sitting there watching the game with you, where we're talking about it in real time, and we both are like, what the hell are you guys doing?
it's just
To
so
put it
many of those
nicely.
games in those first 2 months where they just didn't even get more than one or two attempts off. I'm like, then what are we
Hmm.
like? I think, Sylvia talking about in the beginning where it's like you are on the man advantage, just get the puck off. It didn't even look like you were on the man advantage. It looked like you were
Yep.
playing, you were shorthanded at this point.
Yeah.
So, it's just encouraging. I don't know if they can continue this, 33% production rate on the power play. I'd like to see it. Um, and I don't know. This isn't really anything founded, but there were a few power plays where they had both Vince Dunn and Brandon Montour on the ice, which is fascinating to me. I don't know how it works schematically, and then obviously, you don't have. I don't imagine you'd keep them one of those two on the ice for the second unit, but no, I don't know. It's been good to see it, just improve generally because obviously, you look at some of these games, they'll go 0 for 3, 0 for 4, and that could be the difference if you're able to get one, at least one of those uh, going. So, yeah, we'll go into standouts. I mean, I've been yapping about them already, so I'll talk about Bjorkstrand and Shane. Um, this was going to be an interesting year to me for Oliver Bjorkstrand because as a I don't know if it's sicko behavior, but anytime someone signs a contract with this team or an extension, I did it after the Larson extension. I did it after the Decord extension. I like to go on now Puckpedia and look at who's next, right? What player, could earn a contract, who could you move, who's coming up, and depending on how things go, it was interesting to look at an Oliver Bjorkstrand just because, you got him as effectively a cap casualty when Columbus signed Johnny Gaudreau. May he rest in peace. He had a solid year in year two, year three. I think everyone just kind of sucked generally. That was just a bad year. Um, and it was really interesting when he got healthy scratched because it didn't look like he was bad per se, but he wasn't maybe performing at a top six level. And so from that aspect, I understand, but he is a guy who's making $5.4 million a year. Um, and you'd like to see that performance. And he wasn't really doing much of that, not really performing at a top six role. He gets benched. And then we look at my lovely NHL website. I love when it works. What a crazy concept. Since that first San Jose game, he leads the team in points. He leads the team in goals. He's a more than a point per game player. Um, the accountant, the accountant, he looks like the maestro that we got to know, you know, um, and I don't need him to be, if I'd love him to be a 40 goal scorer. I don't need him to continue this pace all the time, but it certainly helps, right? And that's been electric to see. And Shane Wright, same thing. Second leading point getter since that point in time, since November 29th. 5 goals right behind Bjorkstrand. Um, it's really encouraging to see that from Shane Wright because, obviously since Montreal fans are kind of weird, they always like to dunk on Shane if, he so much as breathes in a negative connotation. Um, so, and Shane could do anything, and there's just someone on Twitter that just is slav better. And I'm like, I don't care. I really don't care. Um, it's been great to see this, from both of those guys, because obviously there was supposed to be a lot of hope in this franchise for this year. You signed two guys who have won cups, who have winning capability. You want to improve the offensive game. They didn't do that so much in the first few months, but you're seeing that happen over this stretch lately, and you're seeing it come from both of those guys, yeah, which is nice to see. It's not all Jared McCann. And even in this stretch, Jared McCann hasn't you know, I'd like to see it improve, but he hasn't produced a lot. Um, Let me see, where can I find him? Yeah, he's the 11th. He's only got 4 points, in this month of since the 29th, which isn't great. I would like to see him turn up a little bit better. But my point being, your best forward isn't having to do, so much of carrying the load. So, um, Jade, what have you thought? Whether it's uh, who are your top performers, of this strength since the month of December began? Whether it's talking about those guys or someone else who's maybe stood out to you, and then Sylvia will go to you.
He hasn't done a whole lot like point wise, but Stevenson has kind of stood out to me a little bit. I was trying to find where I saw somebody the other day say that he wasn't even a top like 400 or something player, and I looked it up. He was like at least top 100, maybe top 50. I can't remember. I can't find the screenshot anymore. But anyways, I was trying to find that just now. Stevenson has always kind of stood out to me. Um, he, I don't know, the way that he moves the puck kind of like entrances, not the right word, but it like kind of it takes your attention a little bit, if that makes sense. Like when Stevie has the puck, it's more of like okay, now I'm watching the Stevie show. What is he going to do next? Who's he passing it to? What's going to be the next move following this? And um, that's something that I saw when he was with Vegas. Same kind of with Monty, honestly, Montour, where it's I'm seeing them with the puck and then I'm trying to figure out what's their next move going to be. Sometimes I can kind of predict where it's going to go. Sometimes I can't. But they have this month specifically so far, they've kind of been two of my like more standout players. And again, not necessarily like point scoring, but more of just puck handling and their performance in general.
Yeah, I definitely agree on the Brandon Montour, especially like saying that you don't know what he's going to do, I think is an incredibly good description
I
of
was,
Brandon Montour show.
yeah, I was watching when Stanley Cup finals last year, when I would watch him with the puck, I was like, I just don't know what this guy is going to do. And then he would blow me away. I watched most of the Stanley Cup finals in a bar down the road from my old house, but with a bunch of old hockey fans. And it was always so entertaining. Everybody was kind of like predicting what's going to happen next. Nobody knows what's going on next. And then he would just blow everyone away. So I'm
I
seeing
think
that now too.
mhm. I think on the similar path, look, I know the Brandon Tanev haters in this world are many. I am not one of them. I Brandon Tanev has been kind of a standout player for me, which I know is like a really weird thing to say because we have not actually seen a lot from him. But considering how bad, I don't think bad's the correct word, how mid to bad the penalty kill has been for the Kraken.
Hmm.
I think I was looking at a map the other day. I think Brandon Tanev is the only player on the Kraken who's like hitting league averages on the penalty kill. And obviously, I'm a big fan of that chaos line with like Yanni Gord when he's like in the lineup. So I pay a lot of attention to my guys. So like watching Brandon Tanev um be able to balance like that defensive offensive role when we do have the penalty kill has been awesome to watch. He's kind of my standout guy. And a little like swaying to the side, I also really want to like take this time to give a shout out to Coach Dan Bylsma for being able to recognize that like, and I as a longtime like Penguins fan, I saw this a lot when I was like younger, obviously was not super paying attention, but he is really good at knowing when the players off the ice need to come off the ice. And that's where we saw like those scratches. That's why the Kraken are working so well right now, because Bylsman's like a guy who is willing and able to take those chances to scratch players that are supposed to be key players, are supposed to be good players, even if they're not players who are having like scoring jobs, like you were saying. Bjorkstrand, was still technically putting up plays. He was still technically putting up like goals, but he did need to be scratched that one time to kind of like come to do a full reset. And you do not get that with a lot of coaches in the NHL where they just like intrinsically understand that the game is life. The game is a whole thing and you have to be able to connect with your players as like through the whole thing. So those are my two standouts.
I have something to kind of it's Flyers, not Penguins, but I've seen a lot of that this year, like where I'm there's been a couple times in a group chat that I'm in where we're mostly Flyers fans, and I'm like, I feel like Bilesma is kind of being Tortorella right now, where it's like you're scratching somebody that's typically playing pretty well and, is regularly helping or scoring points or, helping to get points or whatever, and then scratching them anyway because they're not performing to his standard. So similar, but different side of Pennsylvania. So I totally get what you're saying, where I've had that same train of thought.
Yeah, you really have to like obviously I've never been a coach in my life except for my little brother's 10U and I'm really I'm not allowed on the bench anymore. Um but like you really have to be able to recognize that sometimes your players really do need to like that kick in the ass kind of thing. Not
Hmm.
to cuss on your podcast, Charles. But like I think that's something that Bilesma does really well is that he is able to recognize when like a player's just not giving their full 100. And if their full 100 can come, if they're scratched 1 to 3 games, then he's
Hmm.
going to do that. He's going to take the chance. And I think that's like you said, it's like something, they're doing that in Philly, but like not a lot of coaches are willing to do that if it means
Exactly.
losing points, if it means like losing a game, especially like during Thanksgiving, December,
Hmm.
where the standings are kind of locking in. So being able to see that in our coach first year, with a team again that's just barely coming together, they're barely finding themselves, has been awesome to watch.
Yep. The like not being afraid to make a change in a roster if it means bettering the team in the long term.
Mhm.
Even if it's, yeah, like you said, losing a couple games, losing a couple points, whatever. Is it going to be better in the long term? Yes. Okay, cool. We're doing it.
I want to touch on a couple guys that you guys mentioned. With Stevie, like I'm not gonna mention specifics because I don't want to, and I don't like to do that. Um, but there's one like fan podcast where one of the guys was super adamantly against Stevenson. And don't get me wrong, we all know that that contract was an overpay. You have to do that in free agency a lot of the times if you're going to bring guys, to a franchise that's typically not a winner historically or isn't a great market, weather-wise. You're going to have to do that. It happens all the time in different sports. Um, what was talked about often when he was signed was his passing and his skating ability, and those have been essentially what he's brought.
Yep.
He's a leader, with the assist numbers. His assist numbers, with the deeper statistics are really high. And after the Boston game, I know that um, I don't remember who it was specifically, but someone said that. Oh, I know. I think Piper was talking about it. Piper Shaw was saying that when asked about Chandler's skating, and then Bilesma said it looks like he's gliding half the time, just because of how effortless it is. So, you know, as much of a problem that contract will present, down the future and how not great it is, just like with the Grubauer contract, you have to grow up to an extent and just deal with it. You're looking at the now. We're looking at this season, and he's
Hmm.
providing you distribution. You'd like to see. That's why, when he's been on a line with Andre Burakovsky, I had hoped that, it would unlock more of a skating ability. Not skating, more of Berkey's shot, because his shot is great. Like we've seen his shot, we've seen what his shot can be. We've seen the skill from Andre Burakovsky. Those aren't questions. It's just when he can bring those out. Like even on Money Puck, his shot talent percentage is like second on this team behind Daniel Sprong, which is ironic. It's funny to me. Um, but yeah, I mean, he's been playing on a line with Jared McCann and Andre Burakovsky, and those are two guys who have great shots, right? So, I like to see that distribution out and effective. With Brandon Tanev, I'll be fully honest, and both of these two can attest to it, and you'll probably nod. Like, I imagine the guy's going to get traded. I do.
Yeah.
Just because of the contract and, because of where he plays usually in the bottom six role. But again, growing up and looking outside of the contract, he's always been, I mean, you could probably argue he's always been this team's best penalty killer since he's been here. The
Hmm.
amount of times that and even blocking shots there have been a few times over this homestand where he blocks a shot and he'll limp off the ice. Doesn't matter. He'll still take his next shift. He's like, it's really funny because again, both of these two will attest to it. I was like, hey, if we're gonna deal with this roster crunch, this salary cap crunch, you got to move him and if it was like, oh, what about Yanni Gord? He's making $5 million is essentially your 4C, and I understand that, but I had been told that we were getting calls on Yanni and they were saying no. So I was like, well, I'm gonna keep the guy. Obviously, with Vince Dunn going on LTIR at the time, and then Jordan Eberle going on LTIR, you haven't had to deal with that for the time being, and you won't need to deal with it for a while. Unfortunately, I hope Ebbs is okay. I know pelvis surgery is very brutal. I can only imagine.
I
But
heard that he was
he's
driving yesterday, so
oh, there you go. It's just so funny to think about how after the Islanders game, I saw him on crutches. That's when I knew something was wrong. I was the
mhm.
only one there in the tunnel, and it's me and him, and he's got crutches. I'm like, this isn't good. Um, but then the second funny thing was seeing after Laura and his wife gave birth, he's the one sitting down with the baby.
Yep.
You did not give birth. I don't think he did.
You don't know that. You don't know that.
I wasn't
Insider
there.
information?
Um, but no, all this to say, the scoring touch that he like the two goals in that game against Vegas, to win at home, and then the kind of scoring touch he's had. Uh, I've been frustrated with Brandon because of the money he's making and the line he's typically been playing a bottom six role, right? Um, he's always been effective, as a penalty killer. His efforts always been there. Those have never been questions for me. Um, and the offensive performance, obviously, this is offense wins games, all that. Well, and not offense wins games. That's not the saying. This team has been struggling for offense largely in 3 out of the 4 years that they've existed. Right, year two, the depth scoring was incredible, and he's been pretty solid offensively this year. I mean, again, I don't think any one of us would say great, but he's a guy that will work hard. He will go to the hard areas. He will play well in the penalty kill. He's had a good year. So,
He's the consistency that you're looking for on an on inconsistent team. And I think
that,
I agree. I will admit, I know I will have to go to New Jersey. I know he will get traded. But I think when we have a team that is up and down all of the time, where we have players who are falling asleep some days, and then, other days they're like, they just drank a Diet Pepsi or whatever. Like with Brandon Tanev, we have that consistency. He's somebody who's willing to put his body in front of pucks.
Hmm.
Um, where we really haven't seen that. I think again goes back to identity. We really haven't seen that from the Kraken. Like we haven't seen a Kraken team who is willing to fight for their teammates. There was that whole situation with, I think it was like Ty Carte a
mm,
few games ago, where like he was, getting picked on. Everybody just kind of skated away. We don't get that with Brandon Tanev. Brandon Tanev, he's always on turbo mode. It's the reason we call him that. Like he's just always on, and he's always willing to play the game because it's the game and not because, it's his job kind of thing.
no,
Hmm.
that makes sense. And I think having that no, you know what you're gonna get with Brandon Tanev typically, right? And you really can't say that about that many players. Like, I mean, I could go down the roster list, right? At least, well, since it's Tanev, we'll go in the forward department, right? Like, I know what I'm gonna get from Jared McCann, Brandon Tanev, Yanni Gord. At this stage of his career, I understand what I'm getting from Yanni Gord. Um, Jaden Schwartz typically, but that's yeah. Well, and maybe Shane recently, but it's not a big list, you know. So yeah, I will say that, and then I talked about Shane and Oliver, but when Sylvia brought him up, and I would be remiss to not use the opportunity to talk about Brandon Montour, because that guy, I mean, he's been everything. I know it was a lot less than what it was for Stevie, but there was some chatter about his contract, and I'm like, at some point, at sometimes I'm wondering if he's getting paid enough. Like, and this was something else that Sylvia and I were talking about. I looked at his hockey stat card. He's in He's got a 1.5 offensive rating in the 81st percentile there. He's in the 94th percentile defensively. You know, there have been so many instances where one of your goalies will have his ass out and the puck is in the crease and Brendan Montour comes to save the day and will come and get the puck out of there in that instance, and that includes jumping on the puck. Like even in that regard, yes, you give up a penalty shot, but I'd rather give your goalie an opportunity with the penalty shot than let the puck cross the plane, right? So I mean, it's just been a lot of fun to watch Brandon Montour play, come to the rink every day, just be a fun presence on this team.
Hmm.
Um, you know, you've got a guy that's a winner. You know, obviously there are Stanley Cup champions on this team, but you know, adding someone that's so and Allison Lucan used this word dynamic. Dynamic is such a great word for Brandon Montour. You know, it's been so much fun to see the way that he plays the game and you know, that was a I don't like to do it because obviously there are the later years of that contract, but I don't know how many like slam dunk transactions Ron Francis has made with this franchise. That's one of them. In my like, I'm saying that now, obviously, in year one of the contract, but I mean, it's been remarkable to watch Brandon Montour play every night. It's always really fun to see what 62 we'll get into. So we'll look ahead now to this stretch of games for the Kraken before this winter holiday break of sorts, right? So um they've got home game against Ottawa to close out this four-game homestand that's all against Atlantic Division teams. Um, excuse me. Um, you know, you take a point against Florida, you beat the Bruins, you lose to Tampa Bay, and I was going to say this when we were talking about the stretch initially, but you're not fine with a loss, but considering that you'd gotten points in what five out of the last six games, I'm kind of it's fine. The Lightning, Sylvia, great job in mentioning that Gensel Point Kucherov line because that is, I mean, there are not many lines that stack up with that in the NHL. I know Dan mentioned it at morning skate in media. He talked about that line specifically, you know, and that's it's a difficult line to handle, you know. So you know, you'd really like to close out this game, this homestand with two more points, but like both of you have talked about, I think Sylvia mentioned it, but I know both of you have things you can talk about with Ottawa. Um, they're not going to be a pushover. You know, you've got that game on the 17th. There's a day after that between the next game against Chicago, and they'll play Connor Bedard, Ryan Donato, and I think Kevin Korchinski's still there. I love Kevin. And then it wraps up the week with a back-to-back in Vegas against the Golden Knights, and then in Colorado against the Avalanche, which two of the better teams in the Western Conference and the NHL. Not an easy way to go about closing things out ahead of the holiday break. So, um, how did I go last time? I don't remember, but no, it was Jade first last time. Okay. So Sylvia, just your thoughts on this upcoming stretch of four games before the holidays and maybe any things you'd like to see, and then Jade will go to you to wrap things out here.
Yeah, I'm really hoping the power of friendship beats Colorado. When it happens, I think that game also falls on my birthday. So listen, Brandon Montour, I'm looking just directly at you. I am, if my birthday turns out bad because we lose to the Avs, the vibeless team, I'm gonna be incredibly upset. But yeah, really hoping the power of friendship really, comes through for us here. In terms of Ottawa, they've won their last like four games. No, 4 out of 5 games. They won the last 4 out of 5 games. They just played the Penguins. Won in overtime with a goal from Brady Kachuk. I think really the star there and the star really it's going to be the goalie Olmark if he plays. Is that how you say his name?
Allmark, yeah.
Okay. I love knowing things. It's so fun. Yeah, I think if he plays, and I don't know why he wouldn't on at this point. It's definitely going to be kind of like a goalie battle between him, most likely Joey. I don't see that they will put Gruen again. I know, the Kraken have a better power play. I think they also have a better like face-off percentage. On paper, they are a better team, the Kraken, that is.
Mhm.
But the they have Olmark, they kind of have Brady Kachuk. It's just um it's kind of a up in the air thing. I know that I think the last time they played the Ottawa, Ottawa shut the Kraken out 0-3. So we're kind of dealing with a team who is like just at the Kraken's level, where we get to see, are the Kraken a good enough team, right? Like they're obviously not a great team, but are they good enough to continue to climb up the standings? I think Ottawa is a really, really good litmus test for that. Um, yeah, I'm excited. Also, like Trapper Hat Day, excited for that. I will not be there, but I love watching people get things. Big passion of mine.
Same. The litmus test is a chef's kiss way of explaining that.
What can I say?
Um, yeah, this upcoming road trip, I don't know. Vegas is one of those teams that they really go either way. They're either really good or really bad. And that kind of seems like the way that it's been, at least their past couple games. I was an avid Vegas hater. And then I went to a game in Vegas, and I'm a Vegas appreciator now, unfortunately. So I know it's really disappointing. I wish that this was not how it was, but it is. So I've been kind of keeping up with them a little bit more, and they seem to either be really, really good or really, really bad. There's no in between. It's kind of like the Kraken, where they're playing phenomenally, or they're playing like they've never played hockey before. Um, so I'm a little bit nervous, excited, I don't know, to see how that goes. The game against Ottawa is going to be a game, I'm sure. And
Yes.
then Chicago, I don't really have a whole
The
lot of
most
opinion
game.
on. Colorado's, you said it's a vibeless team
I think
or
that is
lacking vibes? Whatever you said, that's how I feel too.
yes,
Yeah.
that was the word I used. I think the vibes are just not friendly. They're very rancid.
Yeah. We're
I
gonna use
like
the power of friendship and overwhelm
mhm.
them. Yep.
Yeah, their whole like new goalie situation, it seems to be really working out for
Oh,
them. Um,
Yeah,
they
I
have like the power of wood. They have the power of nature on their side.
so much wood.
So much wood. But
Three woods.
I do hope again, they're a very good team. They have
Mhm.
well, who was it? What's his name? He's what
Which one?
all of them, they all look the same to me. Sidney Crosby's little friend,
Nathan McKinnon?
Nathan McKinnon,
Yeah.
just
Oh,
scored
Eight
50
Mac.
points. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
like the first player to score 50 points this season.
Oh.
Obviously, he's insane. But the thing that the Avs have is that they can rely on like three players. And those are
Hmm.
the three players that are really dragging this team through like the season, especially with the goalies that they had before. Um, that doesn't mean that these three players aren't a danger to the Kraken
Yep.
because the Kraken are the Kraken. So again, really, really, really hoping for this power of friendship, you know, for the power of brotherhood to really come through on this
Yeah.
game.
I just like
I
seeing Nathan McKinnon angry.
Me too.
It's
So
really funny.
scary. He scares
I
me.
agree. Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I mean, first of all, for the
He brings,
Vegas
oh
comment,
my God.
um,
That's
no, I
intense.
mean, I think what you were saying, with the litmus test is, we're gonna give you more kudos for that. We're gonna give you I have a hockey stick over there, but I'm not committing to the bit that much. I'm not grabbing that. Um,
I have one over there and I'm virtually stick tapping
well,
you.
I can go grab mine
you
from outside.
this team is 15-15-2. Their goals for on the year are 96. We can look at this more. It goes deep. They are the definition of mid. Like it, it's remarkable. It is remarkable. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's gonna be, and unfortunately they were in a similar situation. They weren't as definition mid last year. Um, but we get too close to the trade deadline and you're like, well, what are we doing here? Because, is it am I gonna push my chips in, maybe get something else? I mean, again, you've got Jordan Everly on the shelf for a little bit.
We're also 5 days away from the trade freeze, which
Yes.
lasts from the 20th to the 27th, which I know that that's the time where a lot of GMs start talking
Oh
and
yeah.
planning
So
things. So
it's like you really do have to learn about yourself through this month and then in January, and picking up these points to begin this month against good teams is a great sign. I'm encouraged by that, but you know, this stretch through January will decide, what you're doing, how we feel about this team going into, the last part of the year. This is another okay. We were just generically mid, and your expansion team core is now aging out with Yanni Gord out of contract, with Brandon Tanev out of contract. Do those guys make it to the end of the year, or do they get sold off to a cup contender? Right. So it's I know I said earlier that I like to grow up and look in the now, but I mean, depending on how the now goes, you're looking at how the future might play out. So, yeah, I mean, you're wanting to improve after how you lost to Ottawa last time, as Sylvia pointed out. You don't want to get shut out again. I would really hate that. And it doesn't make good for our photographers either because there's no goals to capture. Um, but yeah, that back to back is gonna be brutal against the shiny golden stinky Golden Knights, and then you go and play Colorado and Nathan McKinnon, and as you said, a vibeless team. Um, didn't they have it where they were coming off the ice after a game and one of the players broke their stick on top of the tunnel? It almost hit their coach.
Yes.
Like what?
they
What is
also
happening?
had one of their players say that they were going to, sorry to swear, fucking kill their goalie.
Oh,
He has
I
now been traded to the Sharks. So
oh, it was in that deal.
yeah. But that
Wow,
was I think a year or two ago. So
wow. What a
love
disaster.
Colorado.
I wonder
And
if they
yet,
use those vibes to intimidate the rest of the teams. Like maybe that's what they're doing.
I don't know. I've never gotten good vibes from Colorado, so
There's
mm-mm.
something about the height in that city.
The altitude
It
messes
messes
with
with
your
your head.
brain.
Yeah.
yeah. The only good
Yeah.
thing that they have to offer is the Red Rock Amphitheater, in
Hmm.
my opinion.
Maybe one day I'll go. But that is the first ever edition. Again, we could workshop it, but if it sticks, it sticks of keeping up with the Kraken. This is Jade and Sylvia, two of our wonderful contributors to our Kraken coverage. It's been really fun. So much of this has been, trying to help myself. I did a lot of this by myself for 2 to 3 years, and then bringing in these talented folks has been fun. Um, and I just wish that our teams were better so they had more fun things to write about. Because yes, we report on whatever happens, but it's obviously more fun when the team is winning. So, uh, until we see you next time, take care of yourselves, be well, and do whatever you can to make today a great day.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, where are you going to watch all those Kraken away games?
Kraken away games, making a push. I was thinking of coming here just because Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle Sports, only if that's okay with you.
I mean, I love that idea. Hope to see you here.
Hello there, everybody. Charles Hamaker here with Circling Seattle Sports. I'm joined by Jen Barnes of Rough and Tumble that we happen to be at right now.
Yeah.
Jen, why don't you talk to me a little bit about what we're announcing today, which is our partnership.
I'm so excited about this. First of all, I just want to say thank you. I think all of us here at Rough and Tumble are big fans of what you and your team at Circling Seattle Sports does. And so, I know you know this, but when you came to me with this idea, it just seemed pretty natural. And it's not just me. I think a lot of people in the sports community in Seattle also really respect you and your team. So it's exciting to kind of see these two things melding together, and we're really excited to start implementing some of the things and then hopefully seeing you guys a little bit more often.
Yeah, and so with what Jen says about seeing us more often, you know, we've got a few things in the works, but you'll see watch parties here. We'd like to do a few different of our community drives, which you'll hear about here in a little bit from now. You know, we've got to make our announcements one at a time. I can't drop everything.
Not everything
Right.
all at once.
But this has been a home for a lot of our team, whether it's myself, our friend, our photographer Liz is behind the camera. Liz is here often, so our team has kind of adopted this place kind of like our own since I saw you at our soft launch. So, you know, it's been great to have that support. And you know, in a lot of ways, and part of the reason I wanted to do this was the Rough and Tumble embodies a lot of what Circling Seattle Sports wants to do. Obviously with women's sports, with the storm and the rain, but just being, you know, having the game on, every game on.
Yep.
You know, how much of that, you know, did you see a line kind of even before this idea was mentioned when I first met you?
I think it's always felt like that. I mean, you and your team were here on opening night, and you just feel like you're part of the space, so it felt like really natural. And the fact that you actually cover all of the sports really makes your group stand out. So you are always covering all the rain games, all the storm games. You'd have women's softball, you'd have women's basketball, you'd have women's hockey. We love it. So all of those things, and obviously passionate M's fans, passionate Hawks fans, and passionate Kraken and Sounders fans. So really, from our perspective, those two things meshed really well.
So, I mean, you heard it from Jen herself, but this will be our home for all of these events, whether it's you can't make it to these games at home, we're always going to direct you to Rough and Tumble, and obviously the games on the road as well. All these, I mean, we're talking about the rain, they've got their schedule out finally, but this will be our home for that.
Great.
The storm games on the road, this is our home.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes.
I love it.
And when I mentioned it to Jen when I first had this idea come up, I had this idea come up wearing a pink wig.
Yes, you did.
Ahead of Megan Rapinoe's final regular season home game for the Reign this past year.
Yeah.
I told her it's because I wanted this to feel genuine.
Yep.
I wanted a connection to feel genuine, and it does. So that's what this is. Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle Sports, and I'm so excited to finally announce this partnership.
I can't wait.